Is a new storm of war truly beginning to sweep across the skies of the Middle East? Many analysts believe that the current tension is no longer just a regional conflict. Instead, its impact could spread across global politics. At the center of this confrontation stand two powerful nations, the United States and Iran. And now, Tehran is directly pointing its finger at the American president, Donald Trump. According to Iranian officials, the growing instability and rising flames of conflict in the Middle East are largely the result of the Trump administration's misguided decisions and flawed strategies. But Iran is not stopping at accusations alone. Tehran has issued a strong warning, saying that Trump will have to pay a price for the conflict, and Iran shows no sign of backing down until that price is paid. This sharp message came from Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. In an extensive interview with Iranian state television, Larijani directly blamed Washington for the current crisis. According to him, the tense situation in the Middle East is largely the outcome of serious miscalculations by the Trump administration. Larijani explained that Washington believed certain political and military strategies would allow it to maintain control of the situation, assuming that Iran would eventually bow to pressure. But reality turned out very differently. In his view, the United States assumed that applying pressure on Iran, similar to what it had done in other countries, would produce the desired political results. As an example, Larijani mentioned Venezuela. He claimed that the Trump administration believed the political and economic pressure used against Venezuela had brought them strategic advantages, and that the same approach would work with Iran. However, Iran refused to surrender under that pressure. Instead, according to Larijani, the strategy has now pushed the United States into a difficult situation. He argued that the current conflict has created a kind of strategic deadlock for Washington. The United States now finds itself trapped in a position from which it cannot easily escape. In his words, America has become entangled in the web of its own miscalculations and is now struggling to manage the consequences. Toward the end of the interview, Larijani's tone became even more severe. He made it clear that Iran will not forget these events. According to him, the decisions taken by Trump and the conflict that followed will eventually force him to pay a political and strategic price. This statement has further intensified tensions in the Middle East and sparked new discussions across the international community about where this conflict may be heading. Behind the rising tensions also lies the failure of recent diplomatic negotiations. Disagreements over Iran's nuclear program have long existed between Iran and the United States. In an effort to resolve these differences, representatives from both countries held continuous discussions from February 6th to February 27th, lasting for 21 days. The diplomatic world closely followed these talks, hoping they might lead to a compromise or a new agreement that could ease the long-standing tensions. But the outcome was completely different. Even on the final day of negotiations, no agreement was reached, and both sides remained firmly committed to their positions. As a result, the possibility of a diplomatic solution effectively collapsed. Just one day after the talks failed, the situation took a dramatic turn. On February 28th, the United States announced a military operation called Operation Epic Fury. Around the same time, Israel launched its own military campaign against Iran, known as Operation Roaring Lion. These two operations triggered a new wave of military tension across the Middle East. According to analysts, the coordinated military actions by the United States and Israel rapidly destabilized the region's security environment. In response, Iran began launching counterattacks. Reports indicate that Tehran has carried out multiple drone and missile strikes targeting key Israeli locations as well as American military bases across the Middle East. Although the full scale of these attacks and the exact level of damage are not always publicly disclosed, tensions across the region are rising quickly. Military experts warn that if these retaliatory strikes continue, the situation could escalate into a much larger conflict. The biggest question now is, where will this conflict end? Diplomatic channels appear to be closed for the moment, military tensions are increasing, and neither side shows any sign of stepping back from its position. As a result, the Middle East now stands in a state of deep uncertainty. International analysts believe that without a new diplomatic initiative, this conflict may not remain confined to a regional crisis. Instead, its impact could extend to global politics and the broader international security system. That is why the world is now watching closely what step Washington takes next and how Tehran chooses to respond, because the next chapter of this confrontation may ultimately shape the future of the Middle East.